Maseches Bava Basra Daf Kuf Nun Aleph Amud Beis Be'ezras Hashem. We're Kuf Nun Aleph in the bottom of the page. We'll start the last page, the last line of Kuf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, turning into Amud Beis. And today we're going to have Emir Hashem, mamish, like a very, very good sikum Be'ezras Hashem, a sikum of the whole Shechiv Mera business, yeah, of Shechiv Mera, the whole matono, some of the matono, v'chule, with Kenyan, without the Kenyan, it's going to happen today. This is a very major Amud today about the different combinations.
Allows me to remind you.
Before we continue, I want to relate to a question of Moshe from yesterday, right? Thank you for the reminder. And the question was, why does the Gemara have to bring two cases that are seemingly the same? We saw a case of a mother giving Yerusha to one son and then to another son, and we paskin that really it goes to the second son, because she's a Shechiv Mera. The Shechiv Mera, the second dibur is stronger. And afterwards we saw a very similar story about a sister with her two brothers, and also there the second Yerusha, the second matana supersedes, and overrides the first one. I think when stories are brought down, I didn't see anything in the Meforshim, when stories are brought down, usually it comes to tell me that's halacha l'maisa, because that's what the Moram actually did. Now, in the first story, there was an argument. Rav Nachman quoting Shmuel, and then there was Rav Sheshes on the other side. So as much as we tend to say Rav Nachman Shmuel's halacha, it's not always like that, and it's not set in stone. The second story, there was no argument. The second story...
We had already established the status quo.
Beseder. No, lav dafka. Lav dafka. The Gemara tells us the story with no argument. It's like machlokas v'achakach stam a little bit. In other words, when you have a machlokas and then you have a stam, meaning a statement being brought down anonymously supporting one opinion, then we know that's halacha. It's not exactly the same. This is Mishnah, this is Gemara, but I think that's the best I could come up with. This story seems to be like flawless and no arguments and no nothing. That shows you, this is clearly the halacha. So first there was a thought process, there's two sides. The next story tells you that's the final deal. Kach nirali. Maybe there are better answers. You can now come up with your own. So now in the last story of women and Yerushas, serious, women and Yerusha. Weiter, let's go. Achte Dravdimi Bar Yosef, the very last line of Kuf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, Be'ezras Hashem, B'Yishur L'Nishmas of Emir Menachem Akiva Rus Bas Sholem, and Yehudis Bas Moshe David Zelig, and Sarah Bas Moshe, and L'Refuz Kol Chol Yisrael, U'Bifrat Peretz Ben Chava B'Toch Shel Chol Yisrael. Achte Dravdimi Bar Yosef, the sister of Dimi Bar Yosef, Havali Pisketa de Pardisa. She had a piece of land in an orchard, and that's all she owned. She had a small piece of land in the Pardes, and that's what she owned. Very nice. So let's assume now that's all her nechosim. Kol emas dehavas chalsha. Whenever she was sick, meaning seriously sick, she was many times, already at the doors of death. She gave a hakna, a matana, to her brother. Obviously, it's not a natural thing, otherwise she wouldn't have had to do it. There are competitors, and he's the one who she says, I want to give all my money to him. So we all know that if she recovers, he doesn't get it, right? If she gets better, then all the money never goes to him for sure, only if she dies. If she lives, then goes back to her. And so it was. V'chi kaima, and whenever she got better, you can turn the page if you want, because we are in Amud Beis now. Whenever she was kayam, whenever she healed, whenever she recuperated, havas hadraba, she regretted the matana, legally so. And that back and forth went a few times already. She got kol ema, sounds like it was an ongoing thing, like a seesaw. And then zim nechada chalsha, one time she was weak, meaning very weak. Sholcholei, and she sent him a message, she summoned him and she sent him a message, Ta kani, come and be koine. We can ask a question, why you need a kinyan? That's going to be actually today's issue. Do you need a kinyan with Matash Chimra, or don't you need a kinyan? We all know Matash Chimra, you're going to tell me, it doesn't need a kinyan, right? We all said, you say and that's it. However, the local kach peshut for him. So Takani, she came and she told him, she sent for him, saying, come and be koine, acquire legally the piece of land that I have. He sent back, he WhatsApped back, and he said, Loi ba'ina, I do not want, thanks but no thanks. If he was Anglo, he would say. And he said, Loi ba'ina, I do not want, I've had enough of that, basically. So she sent him again a message, To kani kol heicha de boys, come and buy wherever you want. What does it mean wherever you want? Says Rashbam, not only I'm giving you a kinyan, I'm making now clear, you can see it in the Rashbam, that, look at the Rashbam in the first wide line, and she said, the second line, I'm making a kinyan on that. It's not a regular matna Shechiv Mera where words are everything and there's no kinyan. I'm making such a kinyan. A kinyan means that by naturally, so to speak, by default. What's kinyan?
Transfer of ownership. Can't go back. Transfer of ownership. Can't go back.
Okay, okay, kinyan means right. Lakozm means cannot go back. Okay. So then what do we say? We say that it's a kinyan. Come and be koine for me, and that way it's proper. And even if mashma what, even if she's gonna live, still it will be his. That's kinyan, no? So l'chayra, that's it. He has a sure case of getting it. Ozal. And at the end, you know what he did? He went to really accept it, but he was not. He wanted to be smarter than that. Shaira, he said, no, I'm not taking everything. I'm leaving some for you, and to your natural yorshim. So this is not going to be a matna Shechiv Mera that's revocable. It's going to be a matna Shechiv Mera of parts of matana, matna chelkis, which means what? It's more of a chance that it will stay mine, right?
Because if she does,
even if she does, for sure he gets it. But even if she leaves, because it's not all the money, then he stays with it. So he did double vekonumina. Wow, such security, double check, and he went. Both, there was a matna Shechiv Mera loy gemura, not all the nechosim, but only some of the nechosim, and also a kinyan. Sounds like that's a foolproof matana, death proof, life proof, everything proof, and really now sounds like it's going to be in his hand. In his hands, even if she lives, even if she survives, there's a kinyan. Plus the fact that she said only part of it and not all of it, and look what happened. All of a sudden. They both said that he made her agree to that. The agreement was that he's only kind of part of the corner of the orchard and not the whole thing. So what do we have here? It's a partial matana, which is already good, meaning it's more like one bird in the hand. And also there's a kinyan, very nice. Sounds like even if she's going to leave and run back to the gym, and run around it, still it's his. However, surprise, surprise, ki kaima, and again she lived. She's lavdil, like the cat, 9 lives. Lavdil. And again she lives. She can make a lot of money saying her life story. She should go to all these Beis Yaakov events. Sipura Ha'ishi, her personal story, how she defeated Malach HaMavis 9 times. All seminary menahalot will be very happy to hear. She's alive, and what happens? Hadrabo, and she regretted. She says, no, I want it back. Oh, how can you have it back, lady? L'chayra, it's so, secured in the hands of him. Why? It's both chilki and all part of the money, not everything. And there was a kinyan. Listen to this. Asai lekamei de Rav Nachman. She came to Rav Nachman. That seems to be very busy lately because he's a dayan, a very popular dayan. So she went to Rav Nachman claiming that she's right, that she has the right to actually claim it, not even claim it back, that he shouldn't even get it, claim back the matana. I mean that he won't get it, she wants it back, and he's not getting it, even though there was a kinyan, and even though it was partial. Shalach lei to. He sent, Rav Nachman sent to the brother, to the Mekabel. I'm so bad with names, I forgot the names of Dimi Bar Yosef, So he sent to Avdimi Bar Yosef, he summoned him to Beis Din, and he said, come to Beis Din. I want to discuss it with you. You are invited to Beis Din. Loy also, he did not come. Who refused to come to Beis Din? Yeah. Rav Dimi says, I'm not coming to Rav Nachman's Beis Din. Yeah. And Omar, he says, you know why? It's not even a case. It's a non-starter. He's sure that the dayan is wrong. He says, what? Well, that's complete shekel what my sister is doing here. My AC, well, what is there to come for? Shaira, both. First of all, she left some left over to herself, which means that whatever happens with Shechiv Mera, now what? Then we say stays by the mekabel, by the recipient. Vekanumina, and I did double packaging, double security, also did kinyan. What? It's not non-starter. What's the story? Sure, I'm not even coming to this court case. The whole court case doesn't even start.
Hasn't he left the hands of it?
No, doesn't. There's no. So what?
He doesn't have to. It's the brother doesn't.
Says the Gemara. Vekanumina. Shalachle, so Rav Nachman sent back a letter to Rav Dimi, a message. Eloi Osis, if you don't come, you're a refusnik, you don't come to Beis Din. Machin Allah, I will hit you. Besilva, silva is a thorn. Deloi maba dama, with a thorn that does not emit blood, does not bring out blood. In other words, nidui, just like there could be a very painful internal injury that does not bleed, but it's internal, even though people don't see it from the outside. So too, nidui is something emotional. Nobody's going to hit you. Yeah, but nidui is emotionally very, very painful because you're in bidud plus seger plus super seger, yeah? You are completely cut off, excommunicated. So therefore, that's what we're going to do to you. Omar lehu le-sahadi. So he came to Beis Din. He's now cooperating and he's coming to Beis Din. Omar lehu le-sahadi. Now he told the Eidim, Mehechi have Maisa. The brother is asking, I think it's the brother is asking the Eidim, how was the story? What was the story like? Or maybe it's Rav Nachman asking them. I don't know. It doesn't really make a difference. The Eidim on her side, those people that were by her bedside when she did that kinyan, now, maybe it's Rav Nachman, is asking them exactly what did she say? What were her exact words? Yeah. And they told him, and here comes a game changer. They told him, you know what she said? She said, Hachi, that's what she said. Vai, woe to me, de kamisa hach itasa. This itza, talking about herself in third person, very accepted in times of the Gemara. That woman is going to die, and without seeing her brother. I want to see my beloved brother. He refused to come. The brother refused to come to me. At the beginning, he didn't want to come. And she said, I'm going to die. And now I'm going to die without seeing him. And I want to give him this matana because I'm going to die. She actually mentioned death in the actual text of her words. That changes everything. Now we have a new concept called mitzave machmas misa. We did mention it in passing. Now we're going to say it. Now we're going to focus it in more. Omar lehu, so now Rav Nachman told everyone, if that's a story that she actually mentioned death, hava mitzava machmas misa. She has the same status of a new kind of story, mitzava machmas misa. You have Shechiv Mera, you have mitzava machmas misa. We're going to elaborate on the differences. Mitzava machmas misa choizer, which means everything we said about the Shechiv Mera, the Shechiv Mera may or may not revoke his words, and we said that if it's a partial matana, then no, if a Shechiv Mera is about to die. But he did not mention anything about death. We are putting words in his mouth. We are thinking for him. And we say, the guy's connected to 10 tubes and the guy has green-faced doctors, you're going to live in 2 days, you're going to die. Then we assume that he's acting upon that. And we say, Mistom is giving the matana. Why? Because he's going to die. And then what? And then we say, you know what? If it's partial, it's one thing. If it is total, it's a different thing. Yeah, v'chulei. And let's say partial. If he stays alive, if he recuperates, then what? The matana stays with the other person. However, if he clearly said misa, even without a condition tzvi, not like you said yesterday, even if he did not say, I'm conditioning it to death, but he mentioned death in the same context, like I'm about to die and I'm giving him a matana, I'm going to not see my brother and I want to give him the matana, sounds like death is connected to the matana, then we say that he can go back even with a kinyan and even with partial. That actually that overrides everything. Yeah, supersedes everything.
It's closer to that than the Shechiv Mera.
It's closer to that because that is mentioned. It's kilo condition. It's very simple. It's like a condition. You're right. Which means, let's say a person says partial, shmarshal, and everything. A guy makes all the kinyonim with all the chumras and idurim, but he makes a condition. At the end, he says, before the last second, in condition that tomorrow it's going to rain. If it doesn't rain, it's not a kinyan. Avada. Who cares? Kinyan. Who cares? It's a kinyan. The kinyan is a condition. The chiddush is, even though the condition wasn't outright a condition of if then, still we view it as a condition. That's matnas Shechiv Mera. Matnas mitzave machmas misa. Mitzave machmas misa is mitzave because of death. Mimela would say that overrides everything. Even kinyan, even partial, will always go back if he lives, which she did. Then she's right. Then she was right, and her brother didn't know that fact. Tzvi mentioned now, Tzvi mentioned now that what happens if a 20 years old, all robust and healthy on his way from the gym, to the swimming pool, says what? If I'm hit by a truck, then it's a matana. Of course, that's not a chiddush. If a person made a condition, if I'm going to die, if it's going to rain, if Muhammad becomes a mountain, whatever, if anything happens, then of course it's a condition. Avada. The chiddush here is that even though she did not make a condition, she mentioned death and she sort of alluded to it, she somehow connected it without a meforshit knife. That only works by Shechiv Mera. If a 20 years old says my new watch and my new phone, I give them as maton to someone, and he also, I think so, Kimat, actually I'm not 100% sure, but I think so, and he says, half a minute later said, I'm scared I'm going to die. I don't know if that's the same or only then he has to be very ill. I'm not sure, I have to check it out, but I don't think so. In other words, it has to be a proper condition. A Shechiv Mera that mentioned that is like a condition. Kach nearly, I got to check it out though.
So the kidney and the witnesses and everything fall by the side.
Let's go.
Rabbi.
Yes, there's a question from Alan.
Yes.
Right, let's continue. So now, in the chart, we see here, and you guys can do it without the chart. What happens if a person says without mentioning death? A person says without mentioning death, we're stopping the Gemara, we're going to do some summary, and then we continue. Let's do a small quiz on what we already know. We have a chart here with 4 boxes. A person did not mention death, but he's about to die, and he gave all his assets, Now, let's say there was no kinyan. Let's say there was no kinyan at all. Kinyan was not mentioned. Then what do we say?
He died, so it doesn't die.
And very good, and he lived. Let's say he lived, and he gave all his assets away with no kinyan. He said, all my assets go to someone, and then he survived, then
He gets it back.
he gets it back, yay. In the chart, it's an X. X means no matana, it goes back. It does not go to the buyer. What happens if he died? If he died, and he told someone, you're getting all my money, and he died, he gets it. That's a tick. Took me a long time to find it. What about with the kinyan? Does it make a difference if he also made the kinyan? We never discussed it, but you happen to be right. It doesn't make a difference. In other words, even if he made the kinyan and he survived, if he gave everything, it doesn't make a difference because it's like a condition, even without mentioning death. If he gave all the assets, then we assume that, again, it's like a condition, and even if there was a kinyan doesn't make a difference. However, that's going to be discussed, but that's the truth that we know so far. What about if he gave some assets? We're going to discuss now. Now, the second chart we're going to discuss now. Weiter. Itmal. Now we're going to see all different areas. We're going to cover all grounds. Be'ezras Hashem, it will be very clear. Itmal. Matnas Shechiv Mera. Am I on? Itmal. Itmal. Matnas Shechiv Mera be'miktsas. What happens if a person is a Shechiv Mera and he gave some of the money, not all of it? So now, what's the question? Well, we know, you tell me. If he gave some of the money, we all know that if he lives, he gets it back, or nothing ever started. He resumes it, whatever. He keeps it. The other guy doesn't get it. And if he dies, the other person gets it. The question is, does kinyan play a role over here or not? We know that by regular matana, 20 years old, has to do a kinyan. A Shechiv Mera was not completely Shechiv Mera because he's playing both fields. He has both things in mind because really that Shechiv Mera thinks, maybe I'll live. He's hopeful, and that's why he didn't give everything. Maybe he needs a kinyan, and maybe if kinyan wasn't there, then it doesn't work. In other words, it's very, very simple. Forget about all the different things.
Overrides the mixas.
I wouldn't say override. or do we need kinyan for the miktsas? Which means, it's very, very, the question is, let me simplify the question for you. Shechiv Mera has a lot of things about him. Shechiv Mera has two main qualities, characteristics. First of all, there's a business of giving everything versus some of it, nachon. And also, right, that he can go back on his words, because he gave everything. And also,
Doesn't need a
very good, yeah, our superstar Moshe. And he doesn't need what? A kinyan. What about a person who is Shechiv Mera, 15 tubes connected to him, 3 top doctors in Hadassah gave him one day, Shechiv Mera midoraisa shedoraisa. Elomai, but he says, I'm not giving everything. I'm giving 80% to Chaim Yankel, and 20% I'm keeping. He's a big balamuna. So is he a complete Shechiv Mera or not? Wasn't complete. Do we say that he requires a kinyan or not? Yeah. Do we say that Ben kinyan is required because he's half of Shechiv Mera? He's not exactly behaving like one. So do we say that he requires a kinyan for his action to take place or no? Yeah, it's true what you're saying that the other person would get the matana both in case of death or life, but is there kinyan required? That's a question which we never really addressed properly, and now we're addressing it. So now, look at the parentheses of the Bach. Are you suggesting or asking?
Yeah. It seems that.
Look at the Aleph. The little Aleph takes us to the Bach. And the Bach says over here that Rava Rezi has an opinion. Omer Rava Nachman, hu adin b'matnas bori ubaya kinyan. Yeah, Rava says that really he requires a kinyan. Yes, a Shechiv Mera who's only talking about some of the assets and not all of them, he requires a kinyan. So we think right now, yeah, and actually we'll stay with that. So let's see how that works. Amru Rabbanon kamei de Rove. Rabbanon sat in front of Rove, and they told Rove, Mishmei de Marzutra Breder of Nachman, Chachamim sat in front of Rava the Rebbe, and they told him, you know, Rebbe, you didn't hear the big news? You know what Marzutra, the son of Rav Nachman, the Omar Mishmei de Rav Nachman, you quote Rav Nachman, we have a quote from Rav Nachman, his own son. You know what Rav Nachman's own son said? Big news, flash red news. What's that? Harei kematnas bori, v'harei kematnas Shechiv Mera. A Shechiv Mera that gives some of the assets away and some he keeps, he's halfway, he's chetzi. He is in certain aspects like a bori, certain aspects like Shechiv Mera. We're going to explain right away. Harei kematnas bori, why is it like a matnas bori? In which way is it like a regular matana of a healthy person? Kematnas bori, the whole thing clearly. Nobody hears dementia. The whole thing clearly. Harei kematnas
The fact that he even thinking about keeping 20% to himself
bori
shows that
right. Very good. Shimamad eino choizer, which means it's like a matnas bori as opposed to a Shechiv Mera that gave everything. That two Shechiv Meras now. Shechiv Mera gave everything. He's a complete Shechiv Mera lechumra. That's a Shechiv Mera that gave everything. Yeah. Mashenken. Yeah. The Shechiv Mera that the Shechiv Mera that gave everything, he's who? He's a person, that's 100% Shechiv Mera. These guys are Shechiv Mera, but as Moshe says, he is a person who's thinking maybe a live. And in that respect, he's like a bori, and ein choizer, which means if he lives, he stays alive, and he's back to life, and everything is good and out of danger, and the doctors are all, and all everyone says, what a miracle, then he cannot go back on his words, right? Because we said, you had in mind you may be well, right? And that's why I didn't give everything. So the 80% stay by the recipient. However, but on the other aspect, it's like a Shechiv Mera. I told you that two aspects here. Shechiv Mera de lo by kinyan. He does not require kinyan. So now in the Havamina, I'm in the chart now. Yeah, I'm in the chart. I have a chart attack. And we say, let's say a person gave some, I'm sorry about that. He gave So now he gave some assets. A person gave some assets. We have a chart over here. What do we say? If he lived, yeah, and we say, and there was a kinyan, avada what? He lived, he made a kinyan. Obviously, if he made a kinyan, so we say 80% goes. If he lives, for sure. That's not even a question. If he dies, of course it goes. There's a kinyan. The question is without a kinyan. Without a kinyan, in case that he lived, what do we say, and there was no kinyan, do you require kinyan and don't you require kinyan in case that he actually stayed alive? Do we say there was no kinyan? Right now we say, no, there is no kinyan required, and always, he will always give everything. The 80% is going to work even without a kinyan. His words are God, like a regular Shechiv Mera. What he says works, and therefore we say, that's it. He doesn't need kinyan because he's a Shechiv Mera, which makes sense, by the way, in a way. It's only Havamina. It will make sense because the Shechiv Mera doesn't want to be bogged down by shtuyot and red tape. Yeah, we can say that. He doesn't need now kinyonim and stories. He just wants his words to be to apply. So maybe, these two boxes with no kinyan. There are two boxes: no kinyan live, no kinyan death. Yeah, I would say no kinyan, no pain, no gain. No kinyan doesn't work. That's what the quoted Rav Nachman is saying. I prefer not a question unless it's urgent. Yeah, can you wait for the next step of the Gemara? Thank you.
As long as I'm mixing line, I'm fine.
You are. Omar lehu Rove, Re says Rove, Lav Amina lehu, he told his Talmidim, you quoting Rav Nachman's son, saying things b'shem Rav Nachman, didn't I tell you, Lotitlu Buki Sriki Rav Nachman, don't say the Buki Sriki on behalf of Rav Nachman. Buki Sriki means empty vessels, empty bottles, which means you're saying in nice English, in nice polite English, shtuyot, exactly. Don't quote Rav Nachman saying shtuyot, Hachi Omar Rav Nachman, because I know what Rav Nachman says, with all due respect to his son, I know what Rav Nachman says, Hachi Omar is like verbatim, quote, I know what Rav Nachman says, it does require a kinyan always, which means that in case there was no kinyan, if he lived, we say nothing happened for sure, because he's like a healthy person. 80%, he's alive, he thinks of staying alive, and if he made no kinyan, nothing happened. The Chidush says Rashbam, even if he died, the Shechiv Mera, and he's a Shechiv Mera who was the Rabbanan Shechiv Mera. He's a light, Shechiv Mera light. Second degree. You know the Hebrew word light? You know what I mean? Dati light or Haredi light? You'd never heard of that before. Really? Like, for sure? Never? You? Sure. What's Bekitzer, he's a lighter version of it, yeah? Light is L-I-T-E or L-I-G-H-T, whichever one, yeah? It's a Bekitzer lighter version of Froom, yeah? Yeah, it takes things very, very lackadaisically, lightly. Yeah, no worries about half the mitzvahs. So now, the Shechiv Mera light is the Shechiv Mera who is more similar to, as you very nicely said, Bori, because he's thinking of life more than death, or as much as death, and therefore it requires kinyan. So if there was no kinyan, whether dead or alive, nothing happened. And that is the Chidush of Rava b'Shem Rav Nachman. So let's summarize. It's very, very, very simple. You see it in the chart, and you don't need charts even. By a guy who is for sure thinking of only death, miyuash, he's giving all the nechosim, right? All the nechosim he gave. Kinyan doesn't make any difference. With or without a kinyan doesn't make a difference. Whether there's kinyan or not, there's no difference. The only difference is whether he's dead or alive. If he lives, then nothing happens. All the 100% comes back to him. If he's dead, all the 100% go to the recipient with or without kinyan. However, if he gave some assets, so he's like, in his mind, Baruch is going to say a musar vote. I'm quoting you saying a musar vote without you saying it. It's only the person's mind. Where when your machshava is still connected to life, you considered like a regular healthy guy, 20 years old, running around in a way, and therefore nothing really applies to you. Whether you die or live doesn't make a difference. Well, not financially at least, yeah. The only difference is kinyan or no kinyan. If you made the kinyan, everything works. If you did not make a kinyan, nothing works. So basically, a Shechiv Mera that gave some of the assets, not all, requires kinyan. That's what I was saying to Rava, quoting Rav Nachman, but that's going to stay with us till the end. Rava gave them a big hit, and he says, "Buki Sriki Shtuyot." I know, no question. I'm close to Rav Nachman. I heard him saying it. Although Rava himself, no, you're very patient. You're going to get a prize now. Yeah, although Rava will now attack Rav Nachman. Rava will now attack Rav Nachman from many places about this. Yeah, because that's today's Wam Chidush. But that's what Rava knows that Rav Nachman actually said. Rava is now asking of Nachman. So what was the big bomb that we threw today? And I actually like what you said in the past 5 minutes, even though it wasn't a question. Moshe is sort of like surprised, along with all of us, that we have a new piece of information, which is through Rabam over here, that everything we said about a Shechiv Mera, who is a mixed Shechiv Mera light. Shechiv Mera gave some assets, but not all assets. What do we say? It has to be with a kinyan. Now Rav is going to attack that, and he's going to attack it from previous information we have. Very nice. Rav is now asking Rav Nachman from the Mishnah. Very good. What did the Mishnah say? Shir karka kol shehu matnosa kayemes. A person left a piece of land. Kol shehu, we said, is not kol shehu. It's something to live off. The matana is a matana, whether it's dead or alive. And you know, kinyan is not mentioned. Frekt Rav, my love, the loy konumine. L'choira, it sounds like there's no kinyan mentioned, right? Mashma, even without a kinyan, if the person survives and lives, still the other guy keeps 80%. And says the Gemara, loy dekonimine, says Rav Nachman, or Rav Nachman's lawyer here, whoever defends Rav Nachman, says, tough, I'll make an ukimta in the Mishnah, and that's how I learned the Mishnah. That's not the end of the world. We're building up towards something else. This question is not so deep, they're building up to something else. Ihochi, now comes a real big question. Now comes a real hit on the head. If you want to tell me that there was a kinyan, if so, I have a question for you. Ema Seifa, that's a good question from the Mishnah. Starting the Reisha, we're leading somebody to fall into a pit, into a trap. You want to tell me the Reisha says there was a kinyan? If so, continue reading and see what happens. Haha. Ema Seifa, loy shir karka kol shehu. Wait, you said that if you did not leave any karka, that's a doraisa Shechiv Mera. That's Shechiv Mera heavy, Shechiv Mera super heavy duty. And we say what? That if you did not leave anything, everything 100%, and he survives, we all know, bread and butter, that, of course, matana is not a matana. Wait, but if you want to tell me that there was a kinyan involved, amai en matnasa kayemes, why is a matana not a matana? In other words, we're in the box now of a person who gave all the assets, and he made the kinyan, and he lived. So what if he lived? There was a kinyan. There was a kinyan. No, so what's the answer?
Because he gave everything.
So,
and therefore he really thought he was going to die.
It's like,
he doesn't need the kinyan.
Oh, very good. This is what Shmuel says. Shechiv Mera kol nechosov la'acherim. Shechiv Mera wrote everything to other people. There was a kinyan, and that's like the Shvester. That's the first case we had today. Even though there was a kinyan, she was actually partial. Excuse me, there was something else. Excuse me, not the same case. My mistake. Even if a person is in more than her, all the nechosim he gave, and he made the kinyan on it, Ahmad Choizer. If he stood up, got out of bed, he recuperated, he recovered, and all the fancy words you say, still Choizer. Why? There was a kinyan. And says the Gemara, Beyadua. It's a well-known fact. It's like a non-sari. It's like an inbuilt, embedded condition. Shelo hoyo, it doesn't say mitzaveh. Shelo hoyo kinyan ela machmas misa. I'm erasing mitzaveh and putting kinyan, as the Bach says. Even though he did not mention death. There are three cases. We're not talking about a guy who mentioned death, which is a sister. No, he's a person who did not mention death. He's a person who said what? He says, and because Dr. Shmatzalovsky just told him a second ago he's going to die, and he's saying all the nechosim, it's like he made the condition of death without mentioning it. And therefore, even though there was a kinyan, lo patli, it overrides, it supersedes the kinyan. So very good. So we have now 3 boxes, and they're amazing. Let's look at the first 2 boxes. They're easy. You know these boxes even. Shechiv Mera, heavy duty, serious Shechiv Mera gave everything. It doesn't need a kinyan. The only difference is whether he died or lived. Setu. The guy who's Shechiv Mera, light, as my daughter once said, she was Shechiv Mera light, was giving what? Some of the nechosim, not all the nechosim, playing both fields, hedging both things. Then what? Does he need a kinyan? Yes. Does it make a difference whether he's going to live or die? Financially speaking, no. Kinyan is the only game changer, because of course, if the person, the recipient, is supposed to get 80%, if the guy died, of course he gets it, and if the guy lives, he also gets it. You look surprised. You shouldn't be, right? You're saying all the time that's not even a chiddush. The only chiddush. What? Because there was a kinyan, but if there was no kinyan to the 80% guy, then nothing happened. Bekitzer, be'etzem, the guy who is Shechiv Mera miktzas gave some etzes to Gzakibori. He's like a regular 20 years old, jogging around. Same thing. It's that simple. Kinyan, yes. What?
What you did now was a 20-year-old jogging.
Weiter. Eisive, I mekabel this for my sins. Okay, is everybody happy? Good. There's a third box. What's the third box? A person actually mentioned death. And that's coming up soon. And that's also the sister of Avdimi. And it's coming up now. Eisive. Now again, Eisive of Mishalshia L'Rova. Rav Mishalshia is attacking Rova. Rova seems to be now on the side of Rav Nachman. So Rav Mishalshia is attacking Rova. Because what did Rova say with Rav Nachman? That, as we just said a second ago, a partial Shechiv Mera, a Shechiv Mera Azoi, a light Shechiv Mera. What about him? Yeah, he does need a kinyan. He needs a kinyan, right? Very nice. The mother of Bnei Rochel. Rochel was the person's name, actually. Rochel means a merchant, and here the mother of Bnei Rochel, she is the mother. She was sick. And she said, she said, I want, it's like a brooch or like a kesh. It's some kind of interesting ornament / piece of jewelry. It's in Shabbos and you never have to take a brooch, but it's with hair. I think there are different opinions. The kids are some nice, fancy piece of jewelry. And she says, I want my daughter to get that piece of jewelry. That's very common in Yerushas of women, right? They give over the jewelry, they bequeath the jewelry. That's a nice piece of jewelry. That's 12 money. Yeah, that's 1,200 zuz worth. That's a nice piece of jewelry. I want her to get it. The Mesa. And then the woman died. So now, did she give everything to the daughter? No. Because Kvinosi, she didn't only own one piece of jewelry. She owned a lot of things. She gave one thing to the daughter. The Mesa. And she died. And, okay, Bochdano Emes. Now, the Kimu Chachamim, I think the Gimel is Chachamim. The Kimu, I was right. The Kimu Chachamim is Dvorea, and Chachamim listen to the words. Kimu es Dvorea. They followed, they executed, they actually followed and brought to fruition her words, her Dvoreha. So it sounds like, wait a second, it sounds like there were only Dvorim, talk, just talk, was no Kinyan, Dvoreha. And there was no, she didn't give the daughter everything, just partial. Wait a second, hey, something here doesn't click. She's a light Shechiv Mera woman. She only gave some of the chosim to the girl, the rest she kept for herself. Yeah, and she only, what?
Or maybe she reached it to someone else.
No, so that wasn't the case. You could answer that as an ukimta, but no, apparently she said, my daughter will get my kvinasi, and that's all she said. And kim was dvoreh. Hey, what do you mean dvoreh? There has to be a kinyan. You just told me that a Shechiv Mera light, a Shechiv Mera mixes dvorov, needs a kinyan. Doesn't look like there's a kinyan over there. Because otherwise, what do you mean kim was dvoreh? If there was a kinyan with edim, you don't think the kaimis of dvorim. Kim was dvoreh is like a chiddush. What's a chiddush b'chlal? If there was proper Yerusha or proper kinyan, the Gemara is not telling me exotic stories from the times of the Talmud. We're not learning nice educational or non-educational stories here, right? What's a chiddush? Obviously, the chiddush, there was no kinyan, and it was partial, and it works. Grr, that's against what Rava just said, right? So now, yeah, answers the Gemara. Hasam b'mitzav machmas misa. Very good. That lady, she belongs to the third box over here. A person who's mitzav machmas misa, look at my cursor, and he mentioned death, and she did. In that case, she didn't say, I'm giving matana, and she thought and she did. She said, I'm giving my matana to my daughter after my death. She connected it to death. And therefore, whether there was, even if she gave some of the assets, there's no need for kinyan. In other words, a person who mentioned death is Shechiv Mera heavy, Shechiv Mera serious, even if he gave some of the assets. Exception to the exception. According to Rava, and that's what we stay with. Stay with that. By the way, the other Shittas Rishonim, which I'm not mentioning, and even I didn't go into it, because it's just going to make us give us more trouble. In other words, if a person mentioned death mefurish, which by the way is the beginning of the Gemara, the sister of Rav Dima, that's exactly what she did. There was partial, and there was kinyan. And he said, of course I own it. He said, no. If she mentioned death and she connected the death, she somehow laced it with death together, then we say she's a heavy-duty Shechiv Mera, and she can go back on her words, and she doesn't need kinyan. It's like a regular Shechiv Mera, heavy-duty, serious Shechiv Mera.
Even though she's light.
She's keilu light because he's all mikzas. But because she mentioned death, she's heavy. She mentions death. It's like a kinyan, it's like a tanai. It's Nai of death, is it Nai of death? And then she becomes a regular Shechiv Mera. So there are two ways to become heavy-duty, serious Shechiv Mera. You can either smoke a lot, drink a lot, don't do exercise. No, there are two ways to become heavy-duty Shechiv Mera. What are they? Either the person gave all the nechosim, all the nechosim, or he mentioned death. It's that simple. But a person who did not mention death and gave only some of the nechosim is Shechiv Mera light, and he needs proper kinyan and v'chule v'chule. He's a regular guy. Isn't life easy and beautiful? Yes, it is. Yeah, no. Let's continue. So now, Eisve Ravina Lerova, a question of Ravina to Rova. Our YouTube stars are going back to the screen. Eisve Ravina Lerove. Ravina is now asking Rova a question. Ha'omer tnu get ze leishti. A person says, give a get to my wife. V'shtar shichur ze la'avdi. Remember, an eved, lahavdil from a woman. Also, in order to be free, it's not enough to just financially, it's also a halachic dinei isurim. He has to get a get shichur from the owner. The mes, and he died. He died before they gave. He says, yeah, and he died. Lo yitnu la'achar misa. They can't give the get after the death of the Baal or the owner of the Eved. Yeah, a person who's dead cannot be megarish. That lady, if she was married at the time of her husband's death, she was still married to him, she's an almana, not a grusha. He wants her to be a grusha, he wants her not to be an ibum. Too late. A dead man cannot be megarish from the caver, so to speak. However, tnu monelaploini, if it's not dine isurim, but dine mominus, we're now moving into financial issues, not isurim. He says, give 100,000 shekel to ploini the mace, and then he died. The one who speaks, sounds like the sugi you've been doing for the past month, yeah? He's saying, give a ploini to somebody, give ploini money, and then he, the one who talks, died. Yitnu la'achar misa. They're going to give him la'achar misa. So you see what? You give him la'achar misa, even though there was no kinyan. That's the assumption. Because he just said, give him money, and he died, and you say, yeah, give him the money. Meaning we're mechuyev to give him the money. It's not a recommendation. And the children are screaming, Mapitom. No, our father never made a kinyan. And what? And it's only partial. And you do give him, Mapitom. We said that if it's a partial kinyan, no death mentioned, then we say, why do you give him after me? So we say you shouldn't. Says the Gemara, how do you know that there was no kinyan? Why are you making up stories? Maybe there was a kinyan. And like I always said, Rova, that what? That a Shechiv Mera light, who spoke about some of the nechosim, not all the nechosim, and he didn't mention death, right? So he needs a kinyan, and voila, there was a kinyan. And says the Gemara, no, do me the get. But this again, whenever we see a mission, we have to see the context. There has to be some kind of consistency, some kind of homogeneous kind of text throughout. And what? Do me the get, like a get. Maget, lav bar kinyan, but get, there's no kinyan. When a man gives a woman a get, unfortunately, they have to, then there's no kinyan. He has to give it to her, reshus, her hand, but yeah, there's no money issue there. Yeah, there's no kin. He doesn't have to be makna the get to her. He has to place it in her hand. But it's not a financial thing that she's coining the get. She can't be coined with, let's say, Sudar or Agav. It has to be physically in her hand. There's no kinyan there. We assume that the second part of the Brisa, saying what? That the person said, give 100 shekel, 100,000 to ploini. We assume just like a get is no kinyan, we're consistently saying that also by the makna, hakna, there's no kinyan. By the giving Shechiv Mera, there's no kinyan. And yes, you see it works. That's bad news for us. Again, why? Because it's only partial matana. He didn't mention death. That's a Shechiv Mera like light. And it looks like what? There's no kinyan, and it still works. She's taking it in her hands.
She has to walk 3 steps.
That's for a different reason. It's not a kinyan. Walking 3 steps is never kinyan, and there are like 24 of them. No, she can be. It's kinyan chotzer maybe, but there's no. If a person is makna his wife a get, by, as I said, by ak. If it's on the floor, no, or by chalipin, no, it's not a kinyan. She's not owning it in an indirect way. She has to have it in her hand physically, and the walking is something else. But okay. Yes, avada. Answers the Gemara. Very easy. You making a kimta? I'm making a kimta. The person who said, what? I want my friend to get the 100, he said, after my death. Or he said, I'm connecting to my death. I'm going to die. And within the same context, within the same line, he says, I'm going to die. I just got the bad news from the doctor that I have 1 month to live. I'm giving I'm giving 100,000 to my friend out of 1 million. Then what? He gets it. Why? Because he's not Shechiv Mera light. He's a mitzvah machmas misa. He mentioned death. That's another way to always have the money in the hands of the friend, even if it's not 100% of the nechosim of the giver. Now, Rav Huna Bred Rav Yeshua Omar, Mitzvah Machmas Misa. Now we come towards the end to a new, more opinions now. Mitzvah Machmas Misa be'alma baya kinyan. You know, I will not continue now. No. Let's stop at Rav Huna. I think we had. Let's absorb. What? No, be'alma means usually, regular. Be'alma means regular unless known otherwise. Generally. You want to? Who wants to summarize all the cases? Who wants to summarize? You'll get a candy from the Rebbe's book.